Hello there, what's going on everybody? Today we're going to be talking about Armada, new stuff coming with the Clone Wars wave, and specifically Commanders, how they might see some changes with the upgrade card collection. So we're going to be talking about that today. If you are new here, I just want to remind you there's a new round of the giveaway that just started for a $25 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. Also, if you're looking for ways to support the channel, there's links down in the description below. There's links to Patreon. You can get early access to battle reports as well as some giveaways and all kinds of other stuff down there. There's also some links to merch if you're interested in t-shirts or masks or neck gaiters or any of this cool stuff. We've got all kinds of cool ones. We've got like the Boba Fett one. We've got the Darth Maul one. We've got Darth Vader. We've got Ahsoka. We've got Sabine Wren from Star Wars Rebels. I freaking love these things. They're awesome. All that stuff is down in the description below, as well as links to social media if you want to check me out on Twitter and or Facebook. All kinds of stuff. So be sure to check the description. Now, on to the meat and potatoes of this video. We're going to be talking about Commanders today. So there's an upgrade card collection that is coming. It's going to have new prints of every single card in the game. Now, upgrade cards, not ship cards and not squadron cards, though presumably those may come at some point if there's really a need to. All the cards are still valid, so not everybody's going to need an upgrade card collection, but you're probably going to want one because, hey, a lot of upgrade cards are kind of hard to find. There's a lot of upgrade cards locked behind certain ships. Like, hey, you can only get Spinal Armament in the Liberty. You can only get, you know, cluster bombs in the Home One, which I don't think that many people want cluster bombs anyway. You can only get turbo laser reroute circuits with the MC30. You can only get like this here, this there, and all that other stuff. So now you can buy the upgrade card collection. You can get everything. So that's cool. Maybe even 2 copies of the upgrade card collection if you really want to be pushing it. But in addition to that, you're also getting every other upgrade card because now they're resized. They're full card sizes, which means that basically the same size of card as the squadron cards or LCG cards or baseball cards or the Magic the Gathering cards. You know, the normal card size that you're generally used to. That's the new size of all of the cards. In addition to resizing them, there's going to be a little bit of new iconography that are going to show up on some. Some will have points changes. Some will have errata. Now, it's not known exactly what is going to have points changes or what's going to have errata. We've been shown a little bit, and I've talked about that in some other videos. I will put links at the end of the video for some more Armada-based videos that we've talked about with what we do know and what we have seen. But for right now, I'm going to be focusing on Commanders that may see changes, because I think there's a couple that could maybe see a points change, or maybe even more than that. Starting off with the Rebels, we're going to talk about Leia Organa. Now, this one, spoilers, we already know she's getting a points reduction, right? Leia is one of those commanders that immediately was starting to get criticism that she wasn't really worth 38 points. 38 points is very expensive for a commander, and we've already seen during Gen Con the new version of Leia, which is only 28 points, so a 10-point reduction. Now, there are mixed opinions on whether or not this was enough of a reduction or if she needs to be reduced more, but I think this is a good start, and I think this puts her in a playable position. 28 points is still not cheap. You know, usually 24 or less is something I consider to be cheap. Anything more than that is in mid-range, and like over 32 is when it gets to be expensive. So she's kind of in that mid-range, but she's still, there are uses. I've run Leia before, not often, but she is usable, and now at 28 points, that's a whole 10 points difference. That makes her maybe a little bit more usable. So it'll be really interesting to see, you know, what else gets changed. So I want to talk about some more Rebels that might see some changes. I think General Madine could potentially use a points reduction. I don't think there's anything wrong with General Madine, but I think if you kind of look at like Imperial equivalents, like Jerjerrod, who's like 7 points cheaper or so, that, you know, it doesn't do the exact same thing, but has the same kind of role in that he's mobility and extra yaw. I feel like Madine kind of got the short end of the stick, because here's the thing. I think that Jerjerrod is way better than Madine, and is also way cheaper than Madine. Madine, I think, is too expensive for what he does, because not only is he 30 points, which puts him in the kind of upper mid-range, but also he's requiring that you spend a nav command. I mean, he makes it better, but you might not even get to use his ability if, for whatever reason, if you lose the ability to do a nav command or something like that. So I feel like Maydeen could see maybe at least a slight points reduction because he's also got additional conditions to trigger. So it's, you know, you're paying like upwards of like higher end points for Maydeen, and especially when you compare him to his basically his Imperial counterpart, who just lets you take 2 yaw on your first thing automatically. All you have to do is take a damage to a shield. Now that is certainly, I mean, taking a damage is not a small deal, but the fact that you have control over it, and the fact that, you know, the ships that really want to use it usually have no problem taking a damage because they can take it on whatever their safest shield is. You know, it makes, and the fact that it also doesn't require a command, so you can do a whole different command dial. Like being able to take a victory and doing like a super ultra hard turn with it because of Jerjerrod is so incredibly different than Maydeen. Like, imagine if you had them flip flopped. If you had Maydeen on the Empire with this same ability, it'd be like, oh, so now I have to do nav, okay, and also I'm paying 7 more points for the commander. And now I don't get to do, and I lose the ability to do a different command, so I can't do that concentrate fire that I wanted. I can't do that engineering to repair, you know, or something like that. And that's the other thing with Jerjerrod too, is you can do engineering, repair the damage, and then, you know, or at least repair the damage from last turn if you're doing it every turn. And then, of course, also works really, really well on the Super Star Destroyer, because now the Super Star Destroyer doesn't ever have to nav, can always focus on other things, which makes like builds like Ravager possible. So, you know, I just feel like Maydeen is totally outclassed and could totally use at least a couple of points reduction, like at least 3 or 4 points reduction, I feel like is appropriate for Maydeen. But then again, he's not that bad that he desperately needs it. Like, I haven't been crying out for a year or two to see Maydeen get an adjustment. I just think if we're in the business of doing an adjustment, maybe he's a good candidate for a slight reduction. There you go. Another one is General Dodonna. No, I'm not going to ask for General Dodonna to get a points reduction. I think General Dodonna is awesome. He's actually probably... No, he is my favorite Rebel commander by a long shot. He's the bee's knees. He's amazing. In fact, I wonder if General Dodonna doesn't see a points increase. Now, I know some of you are saying, "Curse you! I love Dodonna." I love him too. So hear me out. I think he's very, very strong. I think he's incredibly strong, and I've always thought his ability was slightly better than 20 points. You know, especially compared to some of the other abilities that are 38 points that were crap, right? Like, right now, I still like Dodonna better than the new Leia. Still do, right? Like, and you know, like, there's a very specific build like that I'd want to run Leia in, even at 28 points. Even at 20 points, there's still only a very specific build I'd want to run Leia in. But Dodonna, to me, works in 100% of builds. Now, some even better, but he's a solid in 100% of builds, and he's top tier in like about half of the builds. So like I just think Dodonna is a little too good. Now, some people might disagree with me on exactly where they rank Dodonna, but I've never seen anybody that doesn't like Dodonna. He's at least great, and if not, you know, in all cases, and he's amazing in my book. So he rises above the great level, right? So that being said, there also may be new things in the Clone Wars that can also put out face-up damage, right? Like, maybe what if there's like a ship title that says you can deal a face-up damage to yourself in order to do something? Kind of like in the style on how Jerjerrod does a damage to yourself to give you some kind of bonus. What if, you know, the droids have a way to cannibalize themselves, like we've kind of already seen with Wat Tambor and stuff like that? What if there's a mechanic out there that's dealing more face-up damage? Well, now all of a sudden, Dodonna could get even better, and that's the problem. Is he's just hitting an asteroid, for example, you know, triggers him. Your opponent, you don't even have to do anything for him to work. Your opponent can do it all to themselves. So, because of all of those reasons, I feel like there's opportunities for him to even go up in cost. So I wonder if that'll happen. I'm certainly not saying it must happen, but it's a possibility. Lastly, I still think Garm needs a reduction, and I know some people out there love Garm. Yeah, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you, Biggs and Schmitty. Well, Schmitty specifically, but yeah, no, and here's the thing. Here's the thing with Garm. Garm is not particularly expensive. He's just a little expensive. I'm still not sold on tokens. But it does look like with the Clone Wars, they're going to start to do more with tokens. They're going to start to do more with tokens. And hey, that's cool. It may be that Garm does not warrant a points change. It may even be that Garm warrants a slight errata. Because one of the things we've seen is that some cards will start with tokens on the side, like they'll start with tokens on the left side of the card. They can spend them in exhaust and things like that. Wouldn't it be interesting if Garm gave you the ability, when you gained those tokens, that they could go on to the ship or onto its upgrade cards? All right, so like that, I feel like that would introduce a whole new wave of complexity and value to Garm, because then you could still use a command for and actually gain a token on the first turn. Because if the tokens you gain at the start of the first round now go to fuel upgrade cards, wouldn't that be awesome? Like, I think that would make Garm's awesome, and I'd happily pay 25 points for him. It could even be possible that he's worth a points increase at that point, but I don't want to go crazy and start advocating for my most hated commander for the Rebellion to suddenly be worth more. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe a slight errata in Garm to reflect some of the new mechanics that we're seeing in the Clone Wars wave. I think we're talking about Empire now, and of course, I gotta talk about my man Will Huff, aka Grand Moff Tarkin. Yeah, Tarkin, I enjoy Tarkin. I enjoy the choices that he gives you. I enjoy the ability to change the type of tokens you want to get every turn. But I also acknowledge that Clone Wars does look like it's starting to do more with tokens. And I think Tarkin might see some increase in his value. But I've always kind of held the belief that Leia and Tarkin were two birds of a feather, and that they were commanders that were seriously overcosted. And I think if Leia went down, Tarkin has to go down also. Not saying they have to go down by the exact same amount, although I think if Tarkin was 28 points, he'd be a solid choice, and I would take him in like at least 1 out of every 3 builds. I would try, at least attempt to try to put Tarkin in there. So I could see Tarkin being a very viable commander at 28 points. Especially knowing that tokens are going to be used in some new ways, and maybe especially cool in the Clone Wars wave. I mean, there's already great ways to use tokens, and so I like a lot of the ways that exist to use tokens now. But I think we're going to see even more, and so that's kind of cool. So maybe, but still, even so, at 38, I still call him a little overcosted. But while he is overcosted, he's at least fun. Again, so my prediction is he'll go down, but maybe not by as much as Leia. I think he'll go down at least 8 points. I could see him being a 30-point commander. That's my prediction. I'm going to call Tarkin at 30 points. Again, I have very little information to work with because I don't know what's all is coming in the Clone Wars, right? I know pretty much exactly what you guys do. So, you know, it's really hard for me to really put a point estimate on there, especially because I don't really run numbers. I just kind of play by feel. But I feel like Tarkin 30 points. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe he stays exactly where he is. Vader as a commander. This guy I didn't used to say has had to come down. He used to be my favorite Imperial commander. Used to be my #1. I loved Vader until one thing happened. The Super Star Destroyer came out. With that Super Star Destroyer came a Darth Vader officer that rendered this card obsolete. Now, some people in the comments have talked about, well, you only get to use that Darth Vader officer's ability once on each ship because you have to choke out an officer. Sure, I understand. The game is only 6 turns long. Okay, so being only able to do it once isn't like once for a million turns. It's only 1 out of 6 turns. First turn, you're not shooting, right? A lot of times, second turn, you're not shooting. So you got 4 turns. A lot of times, the last turn doesn't matter. So there's really 2 or 3 main shooting turns, because sometimes even turn 3, you don't have all your ships shooting. Most games that I have played, and I will say have 2 crucial, integral shooting rounds. 2 very, very important shooting rounds. It's not the same in every game, but I'd say most games, you know, it's usually turns 4 and 5. You know, in some games it's turns 3 and 4, and in some games it's 3, 4, and 5. but it's very rare that there's any shots fired on turn 1. It does happen, but in most games it's also rare that there's significant shots fired on round 2. Like there may be one ship takes like a long range shot that doesn't go anywhere, right? Because the other ship had evades or something like that. That's usually the case for a lot of games. It's usually 3, 4, and 5, and of those 3, there's 2 that are that are really important. That being said, the Darth Vader officer giving you a chance to reroll whatever you want just for choking out an officer for a single point is insane. Because here's what you gain. You gain the ability to get rid of an officer that, presumably an officer that had a start of the game ability or an officer that you don't need anymore. You also can do this twice on your flagship because you can choke out your commander as well. And so that means for the 2 most crucial rounds of shooting, your flagship gets 2 rerolls, right? One for the other, or maybe you have double arced. So you get to choose when you do them, which is great. And you don't have to spend a defense token to do it either, which is also pretty cool. And one of the best advantages, you get to pick a whole different commander, perhaps a cheaper commander. Perhaps a commander like Jerjerrod. Also, perhaps you have a Super Star Destroyer where you can have 3 officers and a commander, right? So you got lots of rerolls. My point is, like, for 1 point, almost replacing a 36-point commander is insane, right? It would be different if the Darth Vader officer was like a 12-point officer. Then it might not, seem so great. But he's 1 point. Every build can make room for 1 point. So that's my thing, is that it's not as good as his ability, but it's almost as good as his ability for 1 point. So Darth Vader as a commander needs a serious points reduction. Or the Darth Vader officer needs an errata or something, but I'm not advocating for that because I actually like it. It's thematic and it's fun. The Darth Vader officer might need to be a slightly more points, but it's a really fun card. But this guy needs to come down, like, significantly, because or just not have the whole defense token thing. But, like, Darth Vader has to have some type of negative with his thing. He's got to threaten or hurt his own people. Like, so that's thematic. I wouldn't want to sacrifice the theme. I just think he could come down to be 26. I think he could do a 10-point drop, kind of like Leia does. 26 points, I think he now becomes playable. He now becomes maybe even 24 points. Maybe even 24 points. I think he's playable at 24 points. And now you're like, okay, now I don't have to worry about choking out my own officers. And he still won't be in every build, because still there's going to be some builds where I'm like, no, I'd rather run Vader officer and a different commander. But at 24 points, it's like, now maybe I don't want to run any officers on my ships, and maybe I want to run fast ships that are going to get into the fight quicker and have more dependency on rerolls and double arcing and things like that. A gunnery team on my ISDs, and maybe I'm running like an ISD Simoon or 2 Simoons each with gunnery team, and I'm going to want to get as many rerolls as possible. Like, there are builds that there's a very few builds that can use Vader today, or that wouldn't, that would definitely want to. I mean, especially because, dude, like, we've got like the newest commander, Ramadi. Like, I usually rather get him because I can ignore obstruction and get an extra die, so I can get a 2 die swing for a lot of shots straight out the gate, for 20 points, on every shot that's obstructed at least. And then not ever have to worry about my shots being obstructed. It's just, I look at, like, the amount of additional damage I'm likely to get, and I feel like Ramadi gets me more. But especially when I've got a Vader officer. So I think Vader needs to come down by like 12 points. But we'll see. We'll see if I get it right. If I get any of this stuff right. Emperor Palpatine. I think Emperor Palpatine is one of the crappiest cards I've ever seen. I thought it was really cool when I first saw it, and I was like, oh, we're finally getting Emperor Palpatine, so cool. And then so I tried to actually use it one time. I'm like, man, this is just, no, this is, no. Because your opponent, like, it just may not work. And again, like I talked about, there being certain turns of where there's shooting, and in certain turns where there's not shooting, or there's not important shooting. And, you're going to be able to use this guy like 2 or 3 times where it really matters. For 35 points, he's up there, man. He's up there in the top tier of points. I feel like he should be super cheap. I think he should be maybe in the mid 20s, 26, 27, somewhere in there. You know, I don't know. I don't know. Granted, I'll say this: Salvo has, you know, done something to the game to make him potentially be revisited, but I personally I don't enjoy playing with Palpatine, because I've got to pick that defense token. So at the beginning of the turn, I can be like, haha, if you brace this turn, you know, and then like, okay, well then I know I won't do that. You know, I'll do other things. You know, and it lets them know what you're going to be doing. I don't know. I'm just not that big of a fan. You know, not that big of a fan. Okay, and then I've got to talk about Constantine. Constantine, universally hated, which is, I suppose, on theme, right? Like, he was kind of a jerk in Star Wars Rebels, but he leads to there's a couple of big problems with Constantine. First problem with Constantine is that he requires medium or large ships, and the theming of that should have kind of allowed you to also let him work with the Super Star Destroyer. However, it does not. That could be something that they maybe errata, but I don't know about that. I think we can go a whole different direction. The second problem with Constantine is that he leads to a negative play experience. You know, being able to tell your opponents, like, oh, you know, you can't do the move you want to do. I'm going to control the speed of your ships. That's kind of a bummer. That's kind of a bummer, especially when you combine it with things like slicer tools or whatever. Maybe speeding your opponent's ships up so they potentially fly off the board. That's not fun. He's just somebody that generally, when somebody's using Constantine, it leads to a not fun game, and I think that cards like that probably need to be changed or just removed entirely. Now, one thing I said is I don't believe any card. I don't think a single card in the game is being removed entirely. I think they said every card is still legal for organized play. So I don't think they're removing Constantine. So what do you do in the interim? Well, his points are. There really wasn't a problem with his points. The problem was his mechanics were not good. So here's somebody who I think is due for a big errata. I would love to see him completely changed into something workable. Maybe he still deals with medium and large ships, but maybe he does something different. Like, hey, if you've got for every opponent's ship that's near one of your medium or large ships, you get to gain a token, you know, or something like that. Or maybe you strip a token from them, you know, or something like that. But like, I would love just some kind of different mechanic for him. And if while they're at it, if they were looking to add a commander that would, you know, utilize some kind of new functionality, like automatically refresh all of your exhaustible cards that have a red thing, you know, or something like that. Like, maybe that's a thing that a new commander could have, because now that factors directly into a lot of the new upgrades and things like that. And so I would love to see him just totally changed. I don't really want him to impact ship's speed that much. There are things that do that, and they're usually not the most fun. And so I want to keep those limited. And I think that's really the community's biggest problem too. Like, people I talk to about Constantine don't like him. Some do, but very few. Very few. So I don't think Constantine needs to stay as he is. I think he needs a total reworking. And as far as points, I throw that up in the air. I'm like, well, it depends on the rework, right? If they do something to make him really cool, then he should be expensive. But knowing the character himself, he should be a cheaper commander that's just got an okay build. Like, he should be a very a moderately undesirable character that has a few builds that he might work pretty well in. That's kind of the role I would like to see for Constantine. Like, he's good for this or that, right? Like I could see him on an interdictor. Like, he should be something that wants to be on an interdictor. Like, so that's, you know, that's part of the theme, but, you know, which works for the whole medium ship thing. However, you know, maybe it's a little more offensive minded, because like that's how he kind of wanted to go in for the kill, right? Maybe he makes the offensive, you know, the 2 red die interdictor a little bit more viable. maybe medium ships get rerolls or something like that. You know, I don't know. But something along those lines. It would, you know, again, and if he gave a boost to medium ships, great. A lot of Empire wants to use Imperial Star Destroyers anyway. Maybe a lot of Empire wants to use Gladiators. I like to use Architons a lot. I think Victories are in a good spot right now, but, you know, there's... and Interdictors are good functionally, but they're usually not good as attack ships. There are a few attack ways to build them, but I could see him doing something like that. I think that would be fun. But yeah, that's those are my thoughts for, I think, some of the commanders that could definitely use some points cost reductions. We know everybody's not being changed. You can see Akbar, he's still 38 points, right? We also saw Thrawn, while he had a visual design change, he's functionally identical to how he plays before, and also did not see a points change. So a lot of stuff is probably going to stay the same. Based on everything we can see here, it looks like a majority of things are going to stay the same. However, it'll be really interesting to see just how much gets changed. My guess is very few things. I would use something like Star Wars Legion as maybe kind of a gauge, because when they do points change in errata, it's very few cards. It's like, I think their last errata, there was only like maybe 4 cards in the game that were hard errated, and then like maybe 4 units that had points changes or something like that. It wasn't a whole lot. So certainly all of my predictions may not come true. Tarkin might stay exactly where he is. Vader might stay exactly where he is. Who knows? You know, and maybe with some of the new upgrades and ships and faction identities, maybe these new commanders will find new places to shine. It'd be really interesting, but I would love to hear from you guys. All right, that's all I've got today. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to share the video, click that little bell for alerts, and I will talk to you guys later. I want to thank you all so much. Big thanks to my patrons on Patreon. You guys are absolutely amazing, and I could not do this without you. So thank you so much for your continued support. I will talk to you guys later, and as always, have a great day.